Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the Romans12One podcast. We would love it if you would go and like and subscribe whatever platform you're listening on to this podcast. That will help the algorithms just let other people know that they can find us, and they can also receive the information that we are sharing with you today. It's our goal to share generational wisdom with the next generation, and you can be a part of that by liking and subscribing wherever you listen to the Romans12One podcast. You're not just a slides op, you're not just the audio engineer. Like, we are all worship leaders.
There are few things more unifying than coming together and singing and just honoring the Lord together.
A lot of the times I see worship musicians so discouraged and beaten down, and they just feel like they're just like these workhorses, and they're just they're not valued. They're beneath the worship leader because they don't have a title, because they're maybe a volunteer musician. They're not getting paid. And it is so important to understand that they do have that title of worship leader, even if it's not explicit. I will never have a computer emulate what I do. I will never be replaced by a machine. The communication of what is coming out of my instrument should be as effortless as you asking me right now, Caitlin, how was your day? And I've said this in my workshops, I am more concerned about being at the feet of Jesus than worrying about the guitar pedals at my feet.
Hey, welcome back to the Romans12One podcast. I just feel like we are flying through these right now.
I know, it's crazy. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
I love it here.
How you doing? You good?
Good. I'm going to address the elephant in the room of my cups.
Okay.
If I don't talk about it, I'm just going to have to talk about it. I have to have a fun drink and a water.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will not drink water.
So maybe this is another way that, like, you and I are related and alike.
We need drinks.
Whenever I go on Sunday mornings.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Sunday morning, what I take into my green room.
Oh, yeah.
I typically will have a big thing of water.
Right.
Because you need to be well hydrated.
As you should. If you're a singer and you're getting up early, you need to be drinking some
Vocalist
water.
hydration starts on Friday, not on Sunday.
Room temp water also.
But then I will stop by Starbucks and I will get their honey citrus mint tea because it's got a lot of teas in it that are good for you. When I get to the green room, I can't believe I'm telling this story. I will put turmeric in it because it's an anti-inflammatory.
I was going to say anti-inflammatory.
But it tastes great. You got the honey, you've got the tea, the citrus kind of helps clean any, you know, junk and congestion, which we get in Oklahoma a lot.
Sure.
And then at some point, and I know this is terrible, you're not supposed to have this, but we have a coffee shop at our church, and I will go buy a coffee. So typically in the green room, I have 3 drinks going at once, and I'll have my water.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And then our drink of choice in the green room is Topo Chico, which is a seltzer water. It's a
I know.
Yeah,
I love
it's
I love a
water.
burn.
Yeah. So when you I don't drink soda. I haven't had soda in almost 10 years.
I was going to say 10 years going on. I think it's longer than 10.
No, it was right before Selah was born, and she's 8.
I thought it was
almost
Corbin
9.
was born.
No, it was before Selah was born.
Guys, I have a lot of
siblings. I just stopped drinking because Dr. Pepper was such like a thing for
People
me.
bought him Dr. Pepper gifts.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, it was a thing. Like, it was either Dallas Mavericks or Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, it's true. I had a Dr. Pepper guitar.
You did?
You know what I did with it?
Did you give it to Gracie?
I signed it, and I gave it to Gracie Schreiber. And I told her, I was like, someday you're going to be incredibly famous. She's a country artist, by the way. Someday you're going to be
She's the best.
super famous, and people are going to be walking through your house, and there's going to be a Dr. Pepper guitar signed by some random guy.
And I'm sure she loved that.
I hope so.
I'm sure she loved that.
I thought it was funny.
She
but
probably
also
cracked
endearing.
up.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That's so funny.
So anyway, I could have up to 4 drinks.
Okay, in my like early postpartum when I was nursing, I was trying to like make sure I kept up with my hydration, make sure that I was getting enough protein. Like, it's a lot of work to be a mom. It's a lot. Anyway, you're so tired though, you almost don't even realize like what you're doing. Like, it doesn't anyway. But I always had a big old Stanley of water because I understand that Stanley is kind of on its way out, but I'm weird about my straws and I like my Stanley. Leave me alone. I had a full Stanley of water. I had a body armor. So water and a sports hydration drink.
Yeah.
And I would have a, I would put my like gut health drink in that. So I had those 2 things, Plus I had a protein drink, like a Fairlife protein shake.
Yeah.
And I would have a coffee.
Nice.
So I was walking in, like I had my stroller, I had my diaper bag, I had my purse, I had my like laptop bag that also had my Bible in it. That sucker was heavy, guys. That sucker was heavy.
Okay,
I was walking into our prayer meetings with all 4 of my drinks. Noah's pushing the stroller, and I'm just like, do. And I had literally all my friends on staff would be like, Marty's walking in with her office. Yeah. I just had so much going on, but like I needed every single one of those drinks.
I've never talked to you about this. One of my favorite things is when I come pick Mav up to babysit him.
How many bags I send him
How
with?
many bags you send with me. Because you've got his diaper bag, which is like a backpack, which I love. And you get all the stuff in it.
Use a backpack as your diaper bag. Just a small plug.
But then you have his bag that has all of his formula,
his bottles, his snacks,
all that kind of snacks and stuff in it.
Yes.
And then there's a bag of toys.
Right.
And then there's usually a bag of like, hey,
this needs to go to my parents' house.
Yes, you left this at the house, or I want to give this to mom. And so I will walk out of your house with 4 bags and the baby.
But you know what? I will stand by my bags.
Oh, yeah?
And here's why. Put everything in bags so that you can carry them. I love this is a shameless, there's a little bit of shame. I'm really about to tell myself here. I put everything in Lululemon bags. They're the best bags.
They really are.
Now, if you saw my stash of Lululemon bags, you'd be like, Marty, are you stewarding your finances well? And I would say yes, because it lasts forever, but whatever. I have all my Lululemon bags because they're great bags and I love them. But like usually Mav's like formula and food and stuff goes in a cute little Trader Joe's canvas bag. And then his toys go in the Lululemon bag. He has the backpack.
She has a whole system. The one thing I could say is
I have bags in my bags too.
And it's all organized.
Everything is organized in bags. My pastor taught me that. She's the best with her like little organization hacks. Like she even was like, just keep baggies with you. Put everything in baggies. It just makes your life so much easier. So I have everything in bags because you can put it on your arm and you can carry it. That's just a life hack for your life. If you have a lot of stuff and you like a diaper bag stresses me out. So like the diapers are in a bag in the diaper bag.
And long gone are the days where you have this massive diaper bag that you just put everything in for you. Like,
I can't live my life like that. And even when Mav was first born, before we needed like an actual diaper bag, I had like my little tote that I would just like keep, but everything was a little bag. There was like the tiny little Mav bag that had his like diaper rash cream and little nose sucker and all those things went in his bag. And I had my little bag of snacks in there. I just had bags and bags and bags in my bag.
This is funny. I talked to Brian Tabor about this a while back. So he was one of the first guests.
Yeah.
I think he may have been episode 1. I think Brian Tabor was episode 1.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I'm not even sure if we had this conversation on camera or not, but one of the things I asked him is I said, you know, as creatives and worship leaders, we get a bad rap for not being organized, right? But I think we actually are. We're just not organized at the same things that are important to other people, right? So we have this whole like organization system and it works well for us. Our music has to be organized, how we play. There's all these little details that we manage that we are very detailed people. We are very
incredibly
organized people.
It just doesn't look the same.
It just doesn't look the same.
And I will say, we do have, like, I talk about this with our former creative pastor. She's over all of our serve teams now. But I was talking with her about this like years ago. I lived with her for a season, which was so fun. But she used to like, she was like, you know, I look at your room in our house. And she's like, and like, most of the time they are messy. She was like, but when they are clean, we are at peak creativity.
Yeah, it's true.
Because we're not so distracted because we're all ADD.
Yeah.
So like, so
true.
creatives do get a bad rap for it, but also like because of like how we are, if we get a system, if you have as a creative, this might not be everybody's testimony, but it's sure mine. If I have a system in place for my organization, that system, if it crumbles, everything else crumbles. So if my bags are like a mess within my bag, I will lose my ever-loving mind. But I am my most creative when everything is packed in their little bags. But if everything gets a mess, I feel like my husband, we were talking about it this morning because like the wrong laundry basket was in the laundry room for the dirty clothes to go into. And I was like, my system
is messed up.
You messed up my system. And he laughed at me, but I was like, when your camera bag, when I put something in the wrong pocket of your camera bag, you also lose your mind. And I think that's a funny thing about creatives is we have our systems.
Yeah, we do.
And for us to function in our most creative and in our best, we have to have those systems.
Yeah, I like to say that I create systems to protect myself from myself.
Oh yeah.
You know, so all the systems usually are like, okay, I know I'm
bad at this or I'm not good at this thing. And so like, I'm going to create a system that helps me so that I can function, in the detail that I enjoy or that I'm good at. So there was a guy named Blaine Hogan. He used to be a creative director for a church in Chicago, and he and I connected, and he used to have a saying. He used to call it cleaning for clarity. So when things are clean, when there's no chaos, it's a lot easier to think through things. And I started implementing that as a creative. It's like, let's get the distractions out of the way. I'm a clutter guy. Things are typically pretty clean, as you know, for us.
Right.
But I can allow clutter to collect in pockets.
Yeah.
And
but guys, when the clutter pile gets too big,
yes, watch out.
Someone in the room.
Because I'm also
someone in the room gets real mad.
I'm also an angry cleaner.
Have you ever felt like nothing is worse than when your whole house is spotless and you get mad?
Oh.
And there's nothing to do.
And there's nothing to clean. I'll
go clean my car. I'm not even kidding.
I raised 5 of you, so I don't ever think there was a point in time when there was nothing to do. So.
Now I have to defend myself on this point, guys. My mess didn't spill out. My mess was in my room or in my bathroom. Yeah. I didn't really leave stuff like out. I had a very contained mess.
Yeah.
Don't like at that season of my life, I'm really good at this now. Because I know how my own brain works, and I know how I will lose my mind if my room is a mess now because I just can't function in peace in it. I'm sleeping much better, by the way, than I did when I was a kid. But I kept my mess very contained.
Yeah.
Versus like I would just see my brother's socks in the living room, and that would drive me nuts because I'd be like, that doesn't belong here. At least my stuff belonged in my room. My room was a disaster, but it was where it belonged technically.
Yeah.
So it made it okay.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Great
One of the
brain.
things that we have to organize a lot as worship leaders is our worship teams or band. And so talk to me a little bit about what your worship band looks like. Like, what's your normal instrumentation for Sunday morning?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to plug my worship pastors because they're literally the best in the entire world. They're incredible. We are a smaller church. Mm-hmm. So I just love it. It's a little gem. I'm just obsessed with it. But we are a smaller church, so usually like on our best Sunday, most full band, we have a lead guitar and a rhythm guitar. We have keys, bass, drums, and between 4 and 6 vocalists pending on the Sunday, pending on the size of our team. If I was saying like we're putting on our Easter service or like we just happen to have a really full team this Sunday, it's the best ever. That is like what it looks like.
Yeah. That's interesting because that's not much different than ours. And I would say our church is significantly larger than ours.
A few times larger. And I haven't been on the platform in a minute due to brutal pregnancy, and my son like took out my lungs. Yeah, it was awesome. I like got scheduled on at one point by the girl who kind of like schedules on a team, and my worship pastor, she was like, "Hey, Marty can't sing." We love her. We love her. Marty can't walk, so Marty can't sing. Right.
That's funny.
Marty would need a stool.
That's funny. Yeah. So our band is very similar. We'll do drums, and then bass guitar. We have 2 electrics, so we'll do
rhythm and lead.
Yeah. And we used to have like a lead guitarist and the rhythm guitarist, and that's kind of changed a little bit in that they both kind of share some lead and some rhythm roles. It kind of depends on the song. Songs are a little bit more produced these days.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're a little less like instrumentally intricate.
So there was a
they're
day
a little
when
bit
like
more like track intricate.
Yeah, and there was a day when like every song kind of had a lead riff to it, from the guitar, and so you kind of needed that a little more. And
sure,
what I love is our guitarists share that responsibility a little bit more.
Oh, sweet! They kind of trade back and forth.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so part of that's our music director. We have an MD who he's the guy on mic telling everybody what to do. So if they forget what chords they're supposed to be playing,
usually lead guitarist, whoever we have as lead guitar, or sometimes bass player, just depending on who it is.
Yeah.
Will also band lead. That was one that I left out.
So
because I'm not in the instrument world.
Right.
I don't have rhythm in my hands. It's a really fun fact about me.
That's true. I can confirm.
Listen, in choir, they'd be like, tap on your leg to keep the beat. No. I had to tap my foot, and I think it's because I was a tap dancer.
Yeah.
And so I like have all of my rhythm is sitting in my feet. It is just not in my hands. And there are a lot of tap dancers back in the day. This is so random, but they would learn drums.
Yeah.
So that they could get like feels for rhythm.
Yeah.
I nannied for a lady whose dad was like a famous country artist in the 90s. And she was like, when I tapped, he also had me learn the drums. So I can drum and tap. And I was like, that would have saved my life if I would have learned how to have rhythm in my hands.
I remember paying for those lessons. Yep.
Yeah. But listen, even when I was like learning keys, I was all over the place in my rhythm. I'm trying to like learn. I can switch chords in my fingers on guitar, but I can't freaking keep the rhythm in my hand.
I will tell you, you got that from me. So, you know, I'm leading worship already, and this would have been when you were a little girl, and music has always been a part. But I grew up in the Church of Christ, so we didn't use instruments,
right? So
I didn't learn to play instruments till really late in life. I was, you know, in my 20s when I started at 18, 19 years old.
No, this is my favorite story because you found a guitar hidden.
Yeah, my dad owned a guitar
in your dad's closet. I'm going to write a movie. Like, I'm going to write a screenplay about that because I think it's so dope because you also learned to play listening to Chuck Berry records.
I did.
This is a movie waiting to happen.
But I initially learned to play guitar because I wanted to play Your Mama's Song for our wedding. That was kind of why
that's precious.
Yeah, so I stole my dad's guitar because he never played it and it was just hiding in the closet, and I learned to play guitar. But anyway, that's not a part of this conversation. So, but by the time I'm leading worship and this is becoming like, okay, this is going to be a thing I do, I decided to go back to school and get my degree in music performance.
Yeah.
And I was great with the vocal, you know, sight reading stuff because that's what I learned to do. Growing up Church of Christ, we had shape notes. That's how you had to learn. But when it came to like playing piano, being able to write, I just struggled. So I literally hired the local band director, Mrs. Gorham, to tutor me in rhythm.
When he says local band director, he's talking high school marching band. Okay, she's a legend too because she would play. Dad used to have horns on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So like a French horn, a saxophone, like trumpets on a Sunday. Like that was normal. That's how I grew up. Dad was in a suit and tie playing his acoustic. And there was a horn section. And there's certain songs. There's clearly. There's certain songs that like ring in my brain and I remember the horn riffs. Like, or I don't know. I'm not an instrumentalist.
Mighty
but like
Fortresses Are Good. Da, da, da,
no, all the earth will sing your praises. Da, 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 da. Like that is just like lives rent free in my brain, which is
shout
so
out
funny.
to Darlene. Yeah.
And that's just like lives rent free. I can like remember her short blonde hair like turns like silver as time went on, but I remember what her fingers did.
Orchestra.
Yes, I remember what her fingers did, and I remember Mrs. Gorham and like Mr. O'Kelly. Like I remember all of them, and then they became my band teachers when Dad tried to force me to learn an instrument.
But yeah, I had to hire her to tutor
teach
me
you rhythm.
in rhythm because I just struggled with it so much.
I mean, I remember playing flute, and I would nail every note, like I killed it. But my rhythm was always off because I couldn't freaking get rhythm.
I don't know what it is.
Hands. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
Not my testimony. And I like to break rules when I sing too.
Yeah.
So
that's
go
awesome.
a little offbeat for a second. Right. I call it creative liberty. So.
Okay, so the reason I asked about your band is because one of my favorite interviews I've done to date is with Caitlin Casciano, and she's a guitarist. She serves at a church in Florida. She also does just really cool stuff, like she plays for Disney, and if you live out in Orlando and you go to Disney Springs, there's a really good chance you'll see her doing like a show by the water. Yeah, the amphitheater there. And so
we love Disney. Just shameless plug. Yeah, we love Disney.
We do. Anyway, so
we love Disney.
But one of the big topics we talked about is how important band members are as worship leaders. I think it's really easy to get stuck in this idea that the worship leaders are the people in front, the vocalists. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things,
or the main vocalist, the one leading the song, or if
they're
you're
the
old
worship
school
leader.
and you call it doing the solo, like.
And we don't do that idea any favors because we call them worship leaders, and we call the guitarist a guitarist, we call the drummer a drummer, you know, or they're with the worship band. But we don't refer to them as worship leaders.
Right.
And one of the things that we work really hard on our team is making sure everybody understands everybody is a worship leader.
Whether you're in the dark corner or you're singing the lead in the song. Yeah.
We talk a lot about RomansTwelveOne on this podcast, but you get down a little bit into Romans 12 and he talks about everybody's been, given their gift, and each one fits all the other gifts that go together, and this is a really great analogy for the band because everybody kind of has their ability to do their thing.
Right.
And when it all fits together, we're able to do the one thing we're called to do in leading worship. There's very few things that we can do as a congregation together. This is why I think congregational worship is so important. If anybody tells you don't have to worship in church, like there's just there's personal worship and there's congregational worship. Personal worship is what you can do in your room, in your closet, when you're just singing. And then there's the thing that we do together as the church.
Right.
And this is why the Hebrews had, the Hebrew language has like 7 different words for praise, because they all kind of represent something that can be done in congregation, in concert, as a group of people.
Right.
Not all the Psalms were written to be congregational Psalms. Some of them are very personal, but then there are some that, David says, clap your hands, all you people, shout to God with joy to God, or shout with joy to God, all the earth, sing to the glory of his name. These are things we can do together. And so what I love is to help our band members understand like how important their role is. You're not just a guitar player. You're not just a drummer. You're not just a camera operator. You're not. No. We laugh about this all the time. Like slides person, maybe the most important worship leader in the room.
They are the worship leader. I don't care if they don't
hit the button at the right time. Everybody stops singing, right? Yeah. So
sometimes I stop singing because I didn't.
But tough. You're not just the slides op, you're not just the audio engineer. Like, we are all worship leaders. And one of the things I love about Caitlin is she understands the connection between her instrument and the music, in which she calls a language, which we'll talk about in our interview, that God has given us to communicate. And then the importance of leading worship from that position, whatever that position is. So I'm really excited about our interview with her today.
That's epic.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool.
I love it too. Like, we've talked about this before, but there are few things more unifying than coming together and singing.
Yeah.
And just honoring the Lord together. And I know there's a lot of chatter about churches in the world right now. But coming together in community and sharing story together in song is just so beautiful. And the Bible talks about like the heavenly choir, and we get that's like, to me, that is one of the ways that we are closest to heaven here on earth. Is when we're singing in choir with our church community.
That's what it's going to look like when we get to heaven.
Isn't that wild?
The vision that John was given on the Isle of Patmos was angels, elders, creatures around the throne. What were they doing? They were singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty."
It made me cry. I mean, it literally is one of the closest things we'll ever get to heaven on this earth.
So, because we can do it together. And that's unifying. the whole point of it. Yeah.
And the literal role of the band is to set the tone for the service.
Yeah.
Like, is to like start your Sunday with praise, community and praise.
Yeah.
What a beautiful opportunity that is not just for the vocalists.
Yeah.
And saying like, whether I am heard or not. I remember being a kid, and this is a really funny thing, but I was really good friends with the keys player's daughter, and I was at her house and she was practicing one time, and I was like, I never hear that while she was practicing. She was like, oh, I just always hear it in mirrors. I didn't think about it. But if I watch like Stacy Kerner, one of your keys players that I just adore, I noticed even like in middle school when she was playing keys, like she worships while she plays.
Yeah.
Whether she is heard or not, like whether I can pick out the sound of the keys above anything else in that moment or not, I am watching her worship, and it is beautiful to see. Like, doesn't matter if she's doing a piano solo, like it doesn't matter. Like, she's just simply there to worship and to lead someone else to the throne by demonstrating what it means to worship. And I never felt like I looked at her and thought it was fake or thought she was like putting on a performance. She was literally just worshiping. It didn't matter that she was the prominent thing being heard in that moment.
Well, if it all fits together, if it all complements each other, then we get to do one thing for the Lord, and we get to bring glory to Him through songs. We enter His gates with thanksgiving in our heart. We enter His courts with praise. And we'll say, this is the day the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. So to me, that's kind of the whole setup for what we get to do on Sundays. So, so anyway, let's listen to our conversation with Caitlin, and I'm excited for you guys to hear what's going to happen with her.
Let's go.
everybody. My name is Tim. This is the RomansTwelveOne podcast, and I'm so excited to have my guest today, Caitlin Casciano. Caitlin, would you just introduce yourself to everybody for me?
You actually did a great job pronouncing the last name. I joke all the time. I was like, I think I need to marry someone that has like a very simple, like one syllable last name. I've been Caggiano my whole life. I love it. So anyway, yes, I'm Caitlin Casciano at Caitlin Guitar. I am a guitar teacher and a worship musician. I've known Tim for a few years now through Experience Conference, which I teach at. I think this was my 9th or 10th year at teaching at Experience Conference. I've been involved with the house band. Absolutely love it. But I love performing. I love being on a stage, but my true calling is to teach people how to speak the language of music on the guitar. I believe that God created the language of music so that people who do not believe yet can experience his love in a language that we can all connect to. And I think it is, I have such a responsibility on my life to actually teach people how to speak that language in the correct way. And I love what I do. I love teaching. It's my purpose and my passion. And I would literally die for what I do. I love it so much, but I'm honored to be here with you. I'm very excited for this conversation. I know it's going to be an amazing time.
Yeah, me too. I'm probably going to embarrass you.
I
can edit this out if we have to. But the first time I saw you play was at Experience Conference, and I am a huge Michael Jackson fan.
Oh, okay.
And
haven't heard this one yet. Never heard this one.
You haven't heard this one yet? Okay, cool. So I'm watching you play, and I literally look at my team, and I'm like, that girl looks like the lead guitarist of Michael Jackson.
Because that was like right when that's when it all came out. Yeah. No, Oriante's amazing.
I was like, I'm going to be her friend. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to meet this person. And so I think I came into one of your workshops and I dropped some kind of a Ralph Macchio reference about the movie Crossroads.
Yes.
And I was like, I was trying to be funny, but nobody laughed kind of moment.
And I think I took it super seriously and gave like a really serious answer.
And you're like, well, I'm Italian. So
yeah.
So that was our introduction, and
that was it,
I was completely embarrassed, but I'm super thankful that you still talked to me.
I think I turned that into a teaching moment.
Did you?
Yes, I do. That's so funny, though.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things I love about just getting to hear you and talk to you, you talk a lot about being a worship leader from your position, and you're not just a guitar player. I mean, you said that in kind of your introduction. Talk a little bit about what that means to lead worship from guitar.
Yeah, I think that is such an important thing. And it's so cool that even before you hit the record button on this, you actually started just our, candid conversation on that topic, which I hope more people are understanding that worship leaders don't need to be using their physical voice. We have, the spirit inside of us, and the spirit can speak through things other than just our tongue and our voice. It can speak through the language of music on our instrument. And I truly believe if you are on a worship team, if you are leading people to the throne of God, you don't just have to have a microphone in front of you. An instrument will allow you to be a worship leader. And so I teach on that with all of my workshops. So anytime I teach worship musicians for any workshops, obviously I have structured things that we go through, but it always turns into some come to Jesus moment, and it's wonderful. And I bring this up for all of my workshops. If you are, and I'll speak for guitar players, but I also speak for all musicians. If you are a guitar player, you are a worship leader. It is what you're doing. And it is so important because I feel like sometimes, more than just sometimes, a lot of the times I see worship musicians so discouraged and beaten down, and they just feel like they're just like these workhorses, and they're just they're not valued. They're beneath the worship leader because they don't have a title, because they're maybe a volunteer musician. They're not getting paid, and it is so important to understand that they do have that title of worship leader, even if it's not explicit. So it's so important to understand the responsibility that you have. It's so important to understand the value and the worth that you have on your life and what you're doing. And there's so much purpose. And if we start forgetting that and think lesser of ourselves, it's a disgrace to what God created you to do. So I love it that I'm such an advocate of that. And I love it that you are as well. And I really hope that more people begin to embrace that.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the weight of our role on our worship team, that regardless of what role you have. You know, the Levites were divided into people that they had specific responsibilities, and some of them were to take care of the inside of the temple, some were to take care of the curtains, some of them their only job was to carry the poles. But the worship of the Lord, at least in that situation, in that era, didn't happen if everybody didn't do their part. And whether we're playing keyboard or guitar or singing or doing BGVs or, you know, whatever the case may be. I mean, it takes all of us. That's really what Romans 12 talks about. One body, many parts, each part has its function. And so
and
I love that you have that perspective.
Oh, 100%. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing this more and more, this discouragement of worship musicians thinking that they are less than the singers, less than the vocalists, or less than the worship leader, is because we do play with a lot of tracks. And if their part my bass player couldn't show up, he's sick, let me just throw the bass on the track.
Ooh,
I really that really bothers me.
Really?
I would honestly rather just play without the bass player and notice the void. Like sometimes you don't recognize somebody's purpose unless they're not there.
Yes.
And I can't stand that. Like, oh, we don't have a rhythm guitar today, so let's just put it on the track. If that happens to me, I say, no, don't put it on the track. I'm going to try to cover as much as I can.
Wow.
I'm going to try to fill what I can.
Okay, so I'm going to explore this with you just a little bit.
Yeah,
okay,
go for
I'm
it.
a worship leader.
I have very unconventional ideas. I offend worship leaders all the time because I don't know. I tell you right now, I will never have a computer emulate what I do. I will never be replaced by a machine. So if you're telling me, oh, there's 7 guitars on this track and we only have Caitlin today, let's put the other 6. I'm like, do not put a single guitar track on there. No, I'm going to cover as much as I can.
This is good for me to hear because I think my bent would be, I will take out lead parts. And I know a lot of times when bands are tracking, they'll track things in such a way where they play a piece of it here and a piece of it on another track. And you can take, several of those pieces and put them together and compensate for, 4 or 5 tracks, but you may want that extra oomph of the power chords, layers of power chords. Yeah. So how do you feel about saying, hey, I want to leave these chords in here so that you can play lead and we still kind of have that vibe of, lots of power? Does that put you in a weird spot, or would you just try to figure that out?
So when I actually,
and you're not going to offend me, by the way. I'm legitimately looking for feedback on this.
Everybody. I offend everybody. So I'm a little unconventional in my methods when it comes to worship guitar. And when I have students that want to go over like guitar parts with me, like they'll book a session and we'll go over the guitar parts for whatever. And it has like 8 or 9 guitars. And they're like, okay, well, which ones do I play? I tell them, don't even think about the guitar parts. I mean, we have multi-tracks and that's great, but sometimes we lose sight of the forest for the trees. So I tell them, just put on headphones and listen to the song. Like, just listen to the full mix of the song. Go in your car and listen to the song. Even set the guitar down and don't even think about the guitar. Just listen to the song. What's standing out to you? Okay, I'm hearing chord changes. I hear this line. I hear some little ethereal parts. Okay, great. Well, then try to cover as much of that as you can. If there's another guitar player on team that same week as you, talk to each other. Listen to the song together and be like, okay, these are I hear power chords. I hear the guitar line. I hear this ambient part or this little delay line. Okay, well, between the two of you, try to cover as much of that as possible. And if when you're covering that together, you're like, you know what, this part is still missing, we'll figure out, go into the tracks and figure out, okay, which one of those stems could cover the part that we're missing. Not, okay, there's 9 guitar stems and 2 guitar players, so let's put 7 of the guitar stems on the track.
Right, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
That's more of a conservative way that I would go about it. But honestly, I'm like, let me cover as much as I possibly can.
Okay,
let me
so
just cover as much of it as I can.
One of my favorite Eric Clapton stories, which hopefully you'll appreciate than most people I tell about this, is he talks about when he was
he's
younger.
He's my favorite worship leader of all time. I love Eric Clapton.
He talks about when he was younger. Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
We're not going to talk about what songs. No. Anyway,
this will be the part you edit out. I told you there was something in there. Okay.
But he talks about when he was younger, how him and his family would sit in their basement and they would listen to music for hours before they ever picked up their instruments. You're talking about one of the greatest guitar players ever to pick up the instrument. And, I love to use this as an illustration that oftentimes our greatest asset is our ears
Yep.
and listening before
Yep.
we ever try to play. And you kind of touched on that. I think if you can listen,
That's how I practice. That I don't touch. I played 4 songs yesterday at my church. Some of them I had never played before. The first time I touched the guitar was when we sound checked for any of the songs.
Okay.
I don't do. I ear train. I listen to them and then I pick up the guitar.
Okay, so for all the people out there that are novices at playing guitar, is that how you recommend?
Don't try this at home. You could get hurt.
Caitlin said, "I don't have to touch my guitar until sound check."
You will be fired from your volunteer position. Okay, let's go back to Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was the reason why I started doing this. So for some reason, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Nikola Tesla. I don't know. What are we, like 10 minutes into this? You already know how weird I am. So I read Nikola Tesla's biography. I think I was probably 18 or 19 when I read that. Anyway, when he would build inventions, he would spend months writing everything that could go wrong and everything that could possibly go right. He would not even attempt building what it was that he wanted to build until he spent months analyzing and processing everything in his head and writing everything down. That process was longer than the actual building of whatever the invention was.
Interesting.
And when he went in to build it, he could build it so efficiently and effectively because he spent so long processing everything. And so when I first read that, I was like, that's how I need to approach music. The secrets of how I really learned how to master the instrument didn't really come from guitar players. I kind of pulled it from I tried to take like geniuses that I looked up to, which were not musical, and how can I apply their genius methods to guitar playing? It's very bizarre, but it worked.
It's not.
So
that's typically how anybody gets to something brilliant is they borrow from other people. So
yeah. So whenever I actually am influenced by very few guitar players, it's weird. But anyway, when I learn a song, I will spend as much time as possible listening to the song. Now, this process is much easier if you understand where things are mapped out on the fretboard. So if a song is in the key of B flat, I know where my Cage blueprint is of the key of B flat. I know where my B flat major scale is in the 5 shapes, and I can close my eyes and see where everything is. So that step is necessary in order to do this. But whenever you want to do anything efficiently, there are steps obviously that are necessary. So like, for example, I played 4 songs yesterday on Sunday, and I probably got the songs like a week before, but knowing my schedule, I didn't start listening to them until like 2 or 3 days before. But I listen to them. I listen to them when I'm brushing my teeth. I listen to them when I'm in the car. I listen to them when I'm on a run. I listen to them when I'm taking a shower. Like literally, I'm listening to these songs all the time. And then when I'm listening to them, I'm active listening with my ear. So I'm listening to the chord changes. I'm listening to what scale degree the riffs are starting on. I'm listening to what interval or like a little dyads or triads the swells are happening. I'm listening to all of these things. Before I even touch the guitar, I want to know this song better than the people who wrote it. That's
and
my
why
goal.
is that? Why do you want to know it better?
Because I want to, when I pick up the guitar, I want to be able to speak the language fluently. And so when I'm playing the guitar on a Sunday, the communication of what is coming out of my instrument should be as effortless as you asking me right now, Caitlin, how was your day? Well, I know how my day was. I can answer that. That's very, very simple. My day was great. I took my dog on a walk, and all that, very simple. So if I understand, it's because I know how my day was and I know the English language so well, there's not a millisecond of latency. Okay. So if I understand the language of music as fluent as the English language, and I understand every aspect of the song, as well as I know my day and I can tell you how my day was, by the time I pick up the guitar, the thing's working by itself.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of this process took me a long time. I think I read that book when I was 18 or 19, the Tesla book. And I studied with my classical guitar professor in college I told him what I wanted to accomplish with this, how I could learn something without even touching the guitar. And I did an independent study with him for like 2 years to figure out the logistics of this. But now I just listen to something and then I play it on the guitar. When I get on the stage, and we can get into gear if you want to, but I don't even think about the gear. When I get on the stage, the only preparation I have before I play the song, because our sound check, we have a very efficient team. And I mean, I hit a chord and the sound check's over. That's it. So when we start rehearsing the song for the first time that I had never played before, that I've been listening to and I've never touched on the guitar, I will close my eyes. And yesterday we did Red Rock's tune called No Name, which is a great song. We did that in the key of D. So I close my eyes and I visualize the entire blueprint of the D major scale across the fretboard of the guitar. And then I know where I am. I speak the language of music fluently. I understand the song incredibly well. And then the song will play itself. It's like I'm just having a conversation at that point.
That's awesome.
That's it. So very unconventional methods, very weird, bizarre methods. So the greatest music theory book I had was Nikola Tesla's autobiography.
I love it. So a couple of things you touched on there, and I've heard you talk about in classes when people ask you about your pedal board, and you kind of like, I don't want to say you're dismissive of it.
Oh, I'm very offensive.
But talk a little bit about why you don't like to talk about your gear.
For purchasing gear.
We'll talk about why that is, though. I love what you have to say about this.
So I'll come at this from two different angles. The first, I want to talk about it from a musician perspective. I do believe we can be viewing gear as an instrument itself. And when it is viewed that way, where I want to craft the finest tone, especially when I'm playing for my creator, absolutely. When it becomes, I'm a guitar player, so I just have this shopping list of gear. That's something I don't want anybody to ever get into. But as a musician, and especially a music educator, I see some of my students and I see fellow guitar players spending more time dialing in the tones for every song than actually learning the song. And in addition to just learning the song, when I say learn a song, I'm not talking about the regurgitation process of the song. I'm not talking about going on YouTube and finding the tutorial in this key and not knowing what the heck you're playing. I'm talking about, okay, I'm playing No Name by Red Rocks. This is the key that this is in. This is the scale degree that this starts on. These are the intervals. John of Red Rocks, I think, he writes the greatest lines in all of worship music. Shout out to John. He's amazing. In the bridge of that song, it's 6-6-3, 6-6-6-3, 6-7-7-3, 7-7-7-3, 7-1-1-3, 7-1-1. It's amazing what he's doing there. And that's learning the song to me. Like, that's what I did when I was brushing my teeth on Sunday morning. That's what I'm listening to. Wow, he's doing amazing intervals. And those were actually the intervals of one of the lines of the movie Interstellar, and it was really cool. Right. Anyway, so that's what I mean by learning the song. So from a music educator perspective, when we are spending more time dialing in gear than actually learning the language, if you don't know the language, what good is the gear going to do for you? Then the only thing you're ever going to do with music is regurgitate. The only thing you'll ever do in the worship guitar world is regurgitate, which is dangerous in the secular realm because you're never going to become a creative. You're never going to become an artist. You are never going to become an individual. It's even more dangerous in the spiritual realm because God has designed each of us different, and the Spirit is speaking to each person in a different way. And if you do not allow the Holy Spirit to speak through you in the way that God created the Holy Spirit to speak through you, then what good is that?
Yeah.
There should not be regurgitation in the worship realm, if that makes sense. So from a music perspective, that's why I'm like, I don't really care that much about it. Now I know people get so mad at me for saying that, and it is what it is, but that's just my opinion on it. And there's balance with everything. And if we can learn to balance all of that, and honestly, I will tell you, if electric guitar players that are listening to this, if you take 1 month and you put all of the gear stuff and dialing in tone, if you just put it on the back burner for 30 days and focus on, you know what, for this month, I've got a delay patch that works on pretty much every song, a reverb patch that works, and just kick off and on overdrive. That's all I do. That's all I did for that Red Rocks tune. That's all I did. If you can just focus on that for a month and spend the amount of time that you dial in tone on actually learning the language of what's happening in the song. What are the chord changes? Can you figure out the key by ear, figure out the line by ear? Can you transpose it? What scale degrees, what interval numbers are happening here? If you can do that for 1 month, you will learn the language of music. And the next month you start doing this, it will not take you as long to learn the songs, and you can spend now more time dialing in gear.
I love it.
We don't want to replace one with the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's from a musician and music educator standpoint. From the spiritual standpoint, I think it's absolutely ridiculous for guitar players to think that they need a certain shopping list of gear in order to play at church. Now, I know there's some churches that like require a certain level of sound quality, which I won't say anything about, but I have opinions on that. But so I did a workshop recently on gear, on tone for my local church. And the worship leader told me, I need you to help these people sound better, have better tone. I brought my like $5,000 board or whatever it is, super expensive. I also brought this. This is $250. And I said, this is like, I literally played the exact same stuff on this and it sounded great. This is like some Donner makes this. It's $250 and it sounds great. So like, I just get so sick of people thinking they need something. I need this in order to worship. What? Okay, well, unless you're talking about a willing spirit, you don't need anything to worship. Okay? Yeah. The only thing necessary for an electric guitarist or any guitarist to actually worship and be on a worship team is some knowledge of the instrument, being able to play a few chords. I mean, most of these songs use 5 notes. That's all we're talking about. So if you can learn that, we're good. And a willing heart. That's it. That's it. You don't need all of this stuff. So and I've said this in my workshops, I am more concerned about being at the feet of Jesus than worrying about the guitar pedals at my feet. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we've spent so much time and energy sucked into this. Now, again, if you are truly an artist in that space, I have friends that do this tone crafting and they're absolutely just these magicians at it and it's incredible. That's beautiful. You can definitely be that. But when it becomes something that is standing in the way of you worshiping, that is not a good thing. How do you know when it's becoming an obstacle to worship? When you feel unworthy because of the gear that you have. I've played with a guitar player recently and I was looking at his gear and it's like, oh, what is that? And he felt ashamed. Oh, it's just this, But no, it's not. Are you kidding me? That's great. That's great. So when you begin to think less of yourself because of the gear you have, when you have a seed planted in your mind thinking, I need something else because I cannot do this, that's just not okay. Now, again, if there are, I played at a mega church, there's a certain tone quality that is required for that. That's one thing. But I mean, if we're talking about most churches, most volunteer teams, we can make do with what we have. I always say, like, use what you have first, and then when God allows you, like financially, I'm able to buy this new pedal. Financially, I'm able to do this, or like I now have the time to start thinking about. Go for it. We are called to create a beautiful sound and a beautiful scent to our Creator. That's what we're called to do. But when that time comes, okay. Right. But Jesus fed the 5,000 with just a few little fish. So give thanks for what you do have and make that happen. And then ask God to show you when the next step is and what is the next step. Yeah. So I try not to talk too much on tone, but whenever I am asked to do a tone workshop, I will say, I will let you know right now, this is not going to turn into like Caitlin's shopping list. Right. I think that's what a lot of people want, right? Maybe I would assume that's one of the first questions you get is what's on your board. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I've actually tried to stop using my board for workshops. I'll use like the quad cortex, and then people ask me, "Oh, what patch are you?" I'm like, I have no idea, and I just play dumb because I don't want to talk about it. But
I love it.
yeah.
And I love the way you put that. You said it in class. I got really excited when you said it again here when I saw you a few weeks ago. But you said, I'd rather spend more time at the Lord's feet than worried about what's at mine. And
Yeah,
I just think that's such a powerful concept, because perspective and where we put ourselves is so important. When we're standing on a platform, our job is to bring the whole family together, the congregation together, to give our attention and our honor and glory and blessings to the Lord. And if we're worried about what's at our feet or on a music stand, I'm one of those pastors.
And let's go back. Let's go back to what we started this conversation with. Musicians are worship leaders.
Yeah.
Okay. If I am leading a group of people in worship, why would I want my head down and like not even interacting with them? Why would I want to be like pushing buttons on if I have think about this, like I think about that scene in Braveheart when Mel Gibson's leading the army. What would that scene have been like if he's like looking down at the horse and like brushing the horse's hair? Like what that would be.
I hope my horse is ready for this.
So terrible. Like he's looking them in the eye. He's got like veins popping out of his forehead. Like we're going into battle.
Let's go.
When I'm leading worship with my guitar, I am facing them, or my face is up to the heavens, and I'm not looking down because the battle is right in front of us.
Yes.
The guitar is a weapon. It is a weapon for spiritual warfare. And I want to be completely alert in that moment.
I love it.
So
I love it.
We got way too intense.
No, I love this so much. This is part of the reason I wanted to have you on here, because I think one of the things that's missing
is an Italian with a temper.
Or just boldness, right?
Boldness.
There's so much conformity, I think, in what's happening right now. Is everybody wants to sound like everybody else, and I would say even the mega churches that you talk about that have a standard for their tone, it's really more about consistency for them than it is about right. So. When it comes
to good quality tone, it's consistency, not conformity. That is very important. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, I say this a lot to my teams. It's like, look, there's lots of right ways to do things. We all just want to be doing it the same right way. So at some point we have to decide this is the way we're all going to do it. And we all do it that way. So, and I think that's one of the things people don't understand is when Elevation or Red Rocks or CCV or Thrive, when they put their sets together, they need to know that everything's going to sound the same. It's consistency for them.
Of course.
And
but I'm not on that team. The team I was on yesterday isn't on that team.
Right.
So why should it be that way? I remember when I was playing with Meredith Andrews, one of the first times I was playing with Meredith Andrews, she rehearsed barefoot, and it was like the most sacred thing. And there was a song of hers that I never heard before. And I was honest with her, and I was like, I don't really know the line. I'll try to play it best I can. And she looked me in the eye and she said, "Oh, you play whatever you want. Play whatever you're feeling." So like if the person writing the song, I mean, she has more grace than a lot of worship leaders. She's my favorite worship leader to worship with. She's amazing. But when the person that has written the song gives you that freedom, I was like, that moment changed everything for me. I was like, I have been stressing myself out for no reason for so much of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I agree. Boldness is something that is missing. And I think if more worship musicians understood what is actually going on behind the scenes spiritually in the world today, if we actually understood the magnitude of like what's at the cost of all of this, like what's going on, we wouldn't be so wrapped up in, I have to sound just like the guy from Elevation, or I have to sound just like this and be conformed.
Yes.
It's like, because there's different spiritual battles in every local church, and there needs to be boldness to step out in that. And I would rather the person in the back row of my congregation feel empowered and encouraged and feel like the boldness of a lion because of the way that I'm worshiping. And I can tell you right now, that's not going to happen if my head is down facing my board the whole time and I'm playing like a little church mouse, no pun intended. I do not want to be a little church mouse. I want to be like a wild lioness on the stage.
I love using the analogy of Jehoshaphat's army, the story of Jehoshaphat's army with my team.
Yeah.
Right. So, here are the Israelites getting ready to go into battle, and Jehoshaphat intentionally puts the Levitical worship leaders, the singers, in front of, so they are literally on the front lines. And his thought was, as we go into battle, I want to go into battle singing the praises of God.
Yes.
And what ends up happening is there were multiple armies that they were getting ready to fight all at once. And because they went in singing the praise of God, God confused the other armies and they all end up fighting themselves. And God ended up God ended up fighting that battle for them.
Mhm.
And, I talk to my worship team about this a lot is our job is understanding our role in the battle. We stand on the front lines, and our job is to take these people in our room into battles that we have no idea that are happening, and to sing the praises of God, and then just let God do what God does.
Absolutely.
And if we can bless the Lord, man, he empowers our battles.
And when you're coming from an approach of conformity, whether it's a guitar part or guitar tone, it's really hindering on what we could allow God to do.
I don't think Jehoshaphat looked at the Levites and said, "Hey, make sure you're all using the same harp."
Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't his concern.
Yeah.
His concern was that they all went into battle singing the praises of God. So,
and they went into battle together. Which we don't even need to get into this, but the unification of the team is so important. And so when you do focus on my gear is this, my gear is this, my part is this, my part, it leads to dissension a lot. And so I just make sure when I'm leading with my team, we're all on the same page. Like I played with a guitar player yesterday who had one pedal, and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I love that. Let's we're going to war together. I love this.
Yep. It's like I don't know how big of a nerd you are, but it's the scene in Lord of the Rings, when they're getting ready to go. He's like, really is, you have my sword, and you have my axe, and you have my bow. They all have one thing
that's it.
that they do really well, and they all just do it together. Yeah,
that's it. That's the body of Christ. I don't know why we can think about that for the church, but we can't think about that for the worship team.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
It should be applicable for all of it.
Yeah, for sure. So you've been doing this a while. Talk a little bit about how things are different for this generation than in previous generations.
They don't need to know as much theory. They don't really need to be great on their instruments. So it is really important for musicians of this generation to realize you're walking into a world, or you were already there, where less is required of you. You don't need to know a lot of theory. You don't need to master your instrument. You don't need to be able to read music. You don't need to honestly be able to read a chord chart, because you've got YouTube tutorials, you got multi-tracks, you have everything given to you on a silver platter. Something is going to change one day, or, maybe it doesn't, but I have a feeling something's going to break. And when that happens, the real warriors are going to be still standing. Okay. So you have to make sure that you're getting back to the hunt. You're not just allowing everything to be fed to you on a silver platter. Oh, sweetie, here's your multi-tracks. Here's your YouTube tutorial. Not at all. You need to go out there.
Download your patch.
you need to be the lion on a hunt. You need to start listening to things by ear, learning things by ear. Learn how to sight read. Learn how to read a chord chart. Learn how to be an asset to your team and not a liability. What's going to happen when the click track cuts out? What's going to happen when the multi-tracks cut out? What's going to happen when the lead guitar player doesn't show up? You don't have tracks, and you got to step into that role. You have to turn into an asset for your team, not a liability. And one day there will be a time where more will be required of you. But right now, kids from my generation and younger, you are entering a world where very little is required.
Wow.
And you really need to learn how to equip yourself. Yeah.
Do you feel like this generation understands that? Because in some ways, I think this generation feels like a lot is being asked of them. And by the way, I asked that question with a level of honesty for this generation, because I've got kids in this generation. I've got team members in this generation. So that's not a bag on Gen Z or millennials.
So let's just talk about guitar players first, because I have students that are so stressed out, saying, I have to learn 6 songs for Sunday. There's all of these lines. There's 10 guitar parts on every track. There's, I have to dial in tone for everything. So even if a lot is being asked of you, you need to ask yourself of the things that are being asked of me, what's actually necessary? Sometimes we make things far too difficult. When I'm playing for things, it needs to be at a very high level. But I make sure that I shave off anything that truly is not necessary for me. I'm not dialing tones for every single songs. I'm not, maybe there's a part of the verse that I kind of know a little bit. I can kind of figure my way around it. So that has helped my students when I kind of word it like that. Because I had one student tell me he spent like 6 hours or 8 hours on learning the part of one Brandon Lake song because he has spent like 4 of the hours like dialing some tone in. But my worship leader wants it to sound like the record. Well, if you can get it to 80%, that's better than 100%. Maybe if it takes you in 30 minutes to get it to 80% of the record, and it would take you an extra 3 hours to get it to 100%, well, just leave it at that. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
And I think the reason I asked that question is we grew up in an era where it was very orchestral.
Yeah.
And
we
dominated
had a pipe
by
organ in my church.
We were dominated by pianos and organs and orchestras. And so every word had a chord. A different chord.
Oh, yeah.
You had to know how to sight read. You had to know how to look at lead sheets, and, chord charts were kind of a thing, but they were typically attached to a lead sheet, and you had to follow a director. It wasn't a, an MD on a microphone telling you what chords to play.
Conductor one.
Yeah. So, I think about those times. I think how much easier it is today to play.
See, so that's going back when you say, well, there's a lot required. Well, I had a lot. I got off of a click track one time and I was yelled at. And I was told to, as a 17-year-old, I was told to go home and practice or I could not come back.
Wow.
And it's not like that anymore. I mean, that was, granted, there were toxic environments, but it was a different time.
Yeah.
But there was a level of I mean, if they could not have a guitar player that wasn't playing to the click, they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I will say though, if you are a young person, if you are a young musician and you think a lot is required from you to play at your church, then do more. Make it harder on yourself. Okay, so you have to learn 6 songs. Well, instead of just learning the 6 songs and looking up the tutorials and programming the patches or buying the Helix patches for it, learn the key by ear, learn the part by ear, learn the interval degrees of everything. Memorize the songs, learn the vocal melody on the guitar just for the fun of it, make it harder on you. And then you'll wake up a month later and you realize, oh, I really didn't have that much asked of me. If you ever in life think a lot is required of you and it's stressing you out, make it harder on yourself, because then everything else is going to seem a lot easier.
I call that the Michael Jordan method. Jordan would talk a lot about how he would play harder in practices than games. And his whole concept was, if I can
the game is easy.
The game's a lot easier.
Yeah.
That was his whole concept.
Yeah.
So that's really great.
Yeah.
Tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can learn from your brilliance and your wisdom here.
My craziness, my unconventional methods. Yeah. My biggest guitar hero was Nikola Tesla. Yeah. They really want to study from me now. Now you can get a hold of me on Instagram at Caitlin Guitar, Caitlin Guitar, super creative handle. You can also go to my website, CaitlinCasciano.com. And I teach one-on-one Zoom lessons. I do that full time. I teach 2 masterclasses throughout the week. On Tuesday nights, I do a cage system masterclass called Cage Connections. On Thursday nights, I teach a class called Secret Weapons. And it's an intermediate techniques class where you can learn a new technique to add to your guitar, play an arsenal. It's awesome. I'm available if you're listening and you want to bring me out to your church to do a workshop. I love doing that. You can connect with me any way there. But I love what I do. It's an honor to be with you today. And if anybody here if I didn't offend anybody and you have any questions or you want to know more, please reach out. I am a guitar teacher and just a guitarist where I believe more in community than competition. The only competition I really believe in is competition of who I was yesterday. And she was a beast. So I try to outdo her every single day. So community over competition for everything. But I'm a guitar teacher who wants to be in the fire with you, go through the fire with you. I don't think any of us should be alone in this journey. When I have guitar players on my team, we go into battle together. That's it. We're all as one. So anyway, I love what I do. I say music theory is my love language, but I truly believe that the language of music was a language that God had divinely created so that people who don't believe can experience his love through this language. Because I say the universal languages are music and love, and everybody can understand music to some point. So it's very important to understand the sacred quality of that. I will also say here real quick, we need to take back the war on music. Not only, I mean, it's obviously being just completely skewed in the secular realm, but you need to understand the sacredness of not just being lazy in music. And because the devil is using music as a weapon, he's using music as a weapon to lead believers astray and lead other people astray and lead them away from Christ. More than other things, that more than other senses. So if the audible sense, the hearing, is sometimes the most dangerous thing, because we can't just turn it off and on. If I know something is poisonous, I'm not going to put it in my mouth. I'm not going to eat that. If I know something is on fire, I'm not going to touch it. But if I see something on TV that I know is not edifying, I can just close my eyes or turn it off. If I'm hearing music in the background, I can't just close my ears really quick. There's another action required of that. So music is sometimes Satan's most accessible weapon, and we really need to take it back. And that is one of the reasons why I truly believe there's such a responsibility on music educators to be teaching the language of music correctly, especially in a sacred setting and in a worship setting.
Come on.
I love it.
Hey, I'm just gonna say, if people are listening to this, they're not ready to go into battle right now. I'm not even sure why you're here. So
After this talk, you should be ready to run through a wall.
I legitimately am. I'm upset that I'm on sabbatical right now. So.
And look at you, you're like, this is going to be 30 minutes. What, we're at 50-minute mark now. I love it. That's how
awesome.
It should be.
Caitlin, thanks for joining us today. Really
so
excited about
me.
this, and we'll do this again soon. This was definitely a fun conversation to have.
It was way too much fun.